Class is in session, and man, is it good to say that again. It's hitting the books here on Pub Sports Radio, Season 3. And we're happy to be here. Ian Cameron and my right wing, my line mate, if you will, to use a hockey term. We've done shows on this channel now for years. We're back. It's Connor Mack and yours truly back again for another season. C-Mac, it's college football season. It's back, and that's a very good thing for all of us.
It is. I'm such a big baseball guy, and but man, this summer they always feel long. Maybe it's because we're back to normal sports, like scheduled. You know, we've had these last couple of years with COVID, so it just felt like a long summer. But I'm just glad, yeah, football is back. College football, third season hitting the books. I'm pumped, man. Week 0 is not great, and I think there's some good games. I don't know how much of value here. I know you'll probably be firing off, my guy.
Shocker.
But I hope we'll get through these 7 games that we have and kind of tear them apart here and see if we can get some winners.
Absolutely. We got 7 games for week 0 coming up this Saturday, and we will break them all down for you right here, hitting the books. And we'll be here each and every Monday throughout the college football season, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Yeah, I agree with that. All right, we move on to a conference game in week 0. You don't see this every day. Florida International, Louisiana Tech, Conference USA matchup here between these two teams. We've got Louisiana Tech, 11-point favorites, 58.5 the total here. Ruston, Louisiana, of course, the home of this game. Louisiana Tech, they've taken a lot of money. Let me just put it this way. Let me state where this opened, because this line started as low as, I believe, 6 or no, 9.5. It was 9.5, and we've seen it gone up to 10, 11 now in most spots. So there's been some opinion here on Louisiana Tech, and I do think this is going to be an improved team. No question about that. We're going to see the Louisiana Tech squad have a pretty solid season this year. But are you ready in the first game of the season, in what's a conference game, to lay this kind of a price with the Bulldogs here in the opener? That ends up being the question. Sonny Cumbie back for his second year now as the head coach of the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. And the big change here for them is obviously bringing in the former Boise State quarterback via the transfer portal in the offseason, Hank Bachmeier, who is now here as the starting quarterback for Louisiana Tech. And guy's got all the tools and all the abilities, but it just didn't pan out for him at Boise State, and we just did not see that development. We did not see that improvement with him at Boise State, to the point where he lost his job essentially last year because he just got off to a dreadful start. And the offense at Boise State got off to a dreadful start. And they ended up firing their offensive coordinator early in the season because of it. And the writing was on the wall at that point. They made the quarterback change to Green, and the rest was history there at Boise State. And that pretty much left Hank Bachmeier out of a starting spot. And obviously now with college football, these kids lack patience. They're not willing to work at the school they're at, to get better. I've lost my starting job. I got to transfer out and go somewhere where I can start immediately. I mean, that's the world we're living in right now. Why do you think JT Daniels now is on his 6th or 7th football team? It's because he gets kicked around now to different teams, and he wants to start. He doesn't want to be holding the clipboard here in college football. So it's just the world we live in, impatience now. These guys want to start, and if they don't start at the place they're at, they're going to get out and try to go somewhere where they can get that start. And that's what Bachmeier's done here at Louisiana Tech. So be interesting to see how it'll work out, because we know he didn't obviously live up to expectations at Boise State. He does have a lot of experience. He put 4 seasons there, at Boise State. A lot of starts under his belt. So that is something. Now it's going to be, that air raid offense that Sonny Cumbie has basically employed on that side of the ball throughout his coaching tenure, not only as a head coach, but an OC as well. And it'll be interesting to see, in terms of receivers, there's a lot coming back for this football team. Smoke Harris, should be an outstanding wide receiver for them this season. Marquise Crosby, a very solid running back as well for them coming into this season. And it'll be interesting to see. They really added a very good player as well at the running back spot from Baylor, Craig Williams. This guy extremely fast. And it'll be interesting to see how Sonny Cumbie and the offensive coordinators here, Jake Brown, Scott Parr, how they use him in the offense. A lot of returning experience on the offensive line for Louisiana Tech coming into this season. They had some issues last year in terms of protecting the quarterback. And when you look at the fact that from all indications, this is actually a team that wants to speed up their tempo even more on offense this year, Louisiana Tech. So on an offensive line that, even though they had some issues last year with the experience returning, they should be better equipped to deal with that. Last year, the defense was just really, really horrendous. 37 points per game allowed, 128 in the country, Louisiana Tech scoring defense. And especially against the run, they were absolutely brutal, this team. 130, giving up 243 rushing yards per game last year. So I definitely think that is obviously they've got to improve in that run defense this year. They didn't get into the backfield last year. They didn't blow up plays at the line of scrimmage with that defensive line. And how much improvement can they make this year? They're not very deep on the defensive line. That would be an issue, an area that does concern me, I should say, coming into this season. The linebacker, they really went to the transfer portal heavy there. The secondary actually looks pretty good. If you're going to pick a strength on the defense for La Tech, it's probably going to be that secondary. There's a lot coming back. They've got a senior corner, Cecil Singleton, as well as a really, really good Willie Roberts. They've got some experience back there. So they could be good in the secondary, which is important because, so many teams like to throw the ball now. But there are enough concerns with the defensive line and other areas. You got to lay double digits with them. It's a bit of a high number for me. The question is FIU. FIU was a bottom feeder, 2-3 years ago. And even last year, it was a really, really tough start to the season. But I'll be honest, C-Mac, I like their head coach, Mike McIntyre. I've liked him quite a bit in his college football coaching career because we have seen some evidence of him being able, to improve a football program. Now he's in year 2. This team somehow won 4 games last year. 4-8 they went. And there were some ugly results at times. They lost to Texas State in week 2. It was a brutal loss, 73-0. This is obviously a program that it's going to need time you're going to need to give Mike McIntyre time to get them back to a level of, at least to be decent here. And last year they did have some struggles down the stretch. North Texas, Florida Atlantic, UTEP, the injuries mounted. They didn't have a ton of depth. That definitely was a concern. But when I look at FIU this year, I think you could see this FIU team improve. I mean, I like that coming into the year, their quarterback situation looks to be fairly settled. And it looks like they're going to turn to Grayson James, who got a lot of starts under his belt last year. And he was practicing as of just this past weekend, Connor, with the first team offense. So it kind of tells me that they're going in that direction where Grayson James probably will be the starter. He got almost 2,000 passing yards last year. Now, 11 touchdowns, 11 interceptions is not going to cut it. He's got to improve in that TD-INT ratio. You can't have that. But again, year 2 for him, he should be a little bit better, as far as the quarterback, knowing the offense a little bit going into this game. The question is going to be, with this FIU squad, we know at times that defense was just, absolutely wretched and absolutely awful. I mean, they gave up 37 points per game. They were torched through the air. They weren't exactly great stopping the run, giving up 190 rushing yards per game. And like I said, the offense at times was anemic, but I do think there's potential there. James has some athleticism, some mobility. If you look at the offensive line for FIU coming into this season, it's much better on paper compared to last year, in my opinion. And when you look at it, they've got Lindell Hudson Jr. And a couple of O-lines pieces that are going to help make this team, I think, better up front in terms of run blocking, pass protection. The offensive line was dreadful last year, but I do think there's going to be improvement there along that offensive line. Again, we've got Chris Mitchell at wide receiver, some options there. Defensive line, pass rush was just non-existent for a lot of last year, just too much time given to opposing quarterbacks to make plays. That's going to have to improve, but they also feel that there are going to be some pieces that are going to make this better. They went to the transfer portal, and actually, when you look at it, they got a couple of pieces that are not so bad for that defensive line to improve. Linebacker should be pretty good. I think it's probably the best part of the defense. The secondary, last year they had their issues stopping the pass, but you look at it, they've got the experience returning. 3 of their starters back there. It definitely should help for Florida International coming into the year. I am buying into this team being better, and I do think because 2 years ago, they were one of the worst programs. Last year, they were still pretty bad, even though they got to 4 wins, which is still pretty impressive considering how bad they were 2 years ago. And I buy into this coach being a good enough coach where he's going to at least continue that progression of improvement for this program this year. I'll be honest, I'm tempted to take 11 here with FIU. I know this is still a program that's got a lot of ground to make up in terms of closing the gap between them and some of these other programs because they were historically bad 2 years ago. But I like Mike McIntyre. I like what he's doing. I like that down the stretch we saw some improvements. I think overall better at a lot of different position groups coming into this season. And there's still enough question marks about Louisiana Tech's defense in particular that I don't want to lay double digits. I am very interested in this double-digit road underdog. In a conference game, first game of the year, I'm definitely interested in plus 11 or so with FIU. I also think this is a high-scoring affair. As long as the weather holds up in Ruston, we should see some points in this game. 58.5, I would definitely look at playing this game up and over the total. What do you think here, Connor Mack, with FIU La Tech?
Yeah, this was FIU as bad as they were last year. This is the game they look the best. I know it went to OT, but they beat La Tech. They scored 42. That was a season high. You mentioned the wins they had. It was those wins, they were dogs, not only one outright covered, because the other games they lost, they just got blown out. It seemed like they weren't competitive at all. I think Middle Tennessee was a tight game. They lost by 5, but other than that, I mean, these scores were just ugly. Like you talked about, they just haven't been good in Conference USA. And 2 of those wins, the last 20, they've lost. They've been bad road team. That scares me a little bit. 2-16, the last 18 on the road. Grayson James had his best game, against this team last year, 3 TDs. And the one thing here is just a horrible defense like La Tech was. I think Grayson James can kind of throw it around on them a bit. One thing with La Tech you talked about, they don't bring any pressure. Both these teams don't. Both the quarterbacks should be able to stand in the pocket and throw it around. I thought the total was a little bit high, but how can you not? One thing with La Tech, they were basically an automatic over team last year. They just cashed consistently, game in, game out. I'm sure you remember that, Babano. I'm sure you were on some of their overs with La Tech. So I think Grayson James could be all right. Like you talked about, 1,900 yards, 11 TDs, 11 picks. I think he could be a little bit better. Just everything struggles. But I like the 11 points here. I'm leaning that way as well. I do think La Tech is better. You mentioned one thing, the linebackers are okay. The secondary is a little bit better. But if you get no pressure, man, that's not good. And that's kind of how it was last year in this one. So in the end, I'm looking at the points as well. I can't get over, the pass and how bad they were on the road and at times where they just get blown out. Or it seems like if they're going to be in this game, it's going to be close. They could maybe take this money line a little bit with FIU. And it's just, I think there's points, just whether you want to get here on the over.
And I think, too, a lot of the reason, too, Louisiana Tech, it's Florida International's had some struggles the last few years, although I think last year we did see tangible improvement. And again, and you mentioned it, the performance against Louisiana Tech was really good. And there's people that see, Hank Bachmeier, Boise State transfer, can come in here and just rip it up. Well, we got to see. It's not exactly like he played great there, at Boise State. There's a reason why he's at Louisiana Tech right now, all right, because he didn't play well enough at Boise State to keep his job. That's why. And the struggles also led to his OC getting gassed early last season as well at Boise. So keep that in mind. Are we really sold on it's just Hank Bachmeier is going to light up Conference USA this season? Now he could, because there are some really bad defenses in this conference historically. But nevertheless, it's going to be interesting to see what we get here. And there's one thing I wanted to mention too about UMass, and I forgot to. UMass was trying like crazy because this being a Conference USA game reminded me to mention this about UMass. UMass was trying like crazy. They were fucking going overboard to try to get to Conference USA because they are an independent right now. They're not affiliated with any conference. And Conference USA told them flat out, we don't want you. They opted to go to Sam Houston State and Jacksonville State, who are 2 new FCS teams coming into FBS with Conference USA this year, and said, we want these teams in our conference. We don't want you. We don't want UMass. So that tells you the state of UMass Minutemen football program right now. Conference USA, which you could make a damn good case, by the way, C-Mac, that Conference USA was maybe the worst Group of 5 conference last year in college football, because it used to be the Sun Belt. Sun Belt might be one of the best, if not the best, Group of 5 conference now in college football. When you look at some of those performances last year by those teams, Coastal Carolina pulling off big upsets, South Alabama almost beating UCLA last year. You know, Sun Belt's come a long way.
South Alabama, I like them again. I took their win total over. A little thing there.
I agree with that. They're going to be really good against South Alabama. That conference is really good. And CUSA has really declined in recent years. And they still didn't want UMass. So it tells you where UMass is right